Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the third annual summit on renewables, energy efficiency and carbon mitigation in mining. The topic for this presentation and the panel session that follows is mining's new energy paradigm, reducing costs and gaining stakeholder buy-in. I was very pleased when Adrian asked me to speak here today because it gave me an opportunity to come clean with a confession. Ladies and gentlemen, I am a miner and I have been slow to adopt the new energy paradigm. It feels better to have that off my chest. This picture may look a lot like the Grand Canyon, but however it is actually an historically accurate visual representation of some of the meetings that I have attended in the past between the representatives of the renewable energy space and the mining companies. You will notice the representatives from the renewable energy in the foreground, and just on the other side of that boardroom table is the mining company. The gap that you see between the two parties has been populated by a number of recurring themes, including you have to understand, I have a spiky load, the mine life is only based on reserves, it will actually go much longer when you consider exploration upside, reliability and instantaneous availability are the keys to our operation. If we don't turn the ball mill, we will lose. We are very sensitive to upfront capex. Can we integrate this technology with our current power infrastructure? And perhaps the gruff mine developer's favourite response, we run 24/7, not just when the sun is shining. Today, this resistance is reducing and the canyon is narrowing. As you can see in the program, we have 2 days jam-packed with cutting-edge technology that is being proven in the field every day. Providers of capital are entering the sector and creative solutions that seek to mitigate and appropriately allocate risk are being developed. I am happy to admit that I was a bit late to the party. However, 2015 is an exciting time to be working in renewable energy solutions for mine sites that are invariably remote and infrastructure challenged. The question that Adrian posed to me centred on reducing costs and gaining stakeholder buy-in. It begs the question as to why we should need to work on stakeholder buy-in when we are dealing with the potential to reduce costs. It seems like a no-brainer in many respects. Historically, the potential benefits and cost savings of renewables and the apprehension on the part of many miners has been two sides of the same coin. The sheer unavoidable centrality of energy and its critical importance to the mining process. Energy is generally the single biggest component of a mine's operating cost, generally in the order of 30 to 40%. In and of itself, this is enough to make energy of prime concern to any project developer or operator. Probably more important is the risk that power is absent, because this starts to hit your largest cost, which is capital and the need to make a return on the capital. If your ball mill isn't turning, your $500 million project isn't looking very healthy. While the mining industry works hard to make everything it does as precise, scheduled and orderly as possible, it is really the application of brute force when you consider it in its simplest context. In situ rock, sometimes located deep below the surface, is removed in a process that gradually reduces the size of the particles through the application of energy in an effort to separate the bits that we want from the bits that need to stay behind. One of the key metrics in mining, a staple feature of any feasibility study, and a favourite question of investors, is what the work index of the ore is. Essentially, how receptive is the ore to being reduced in size through the grinding process? The answer, measured in kilowatts per hour, usually elicits a sage nod of approval or a pensive frown of concern, depending on the score. While there are plenty of factors that may have a much greater impact on the outcome of a development project, the work index question illustrates the power consumption, even somewhat indirectly, is never far from people's minds. Now, having just said how important the power equation is to a mining project, I have another confession to make. When I first joined the mining industry in the late 1990s, I didn't worry too much about energy and power. At the Stawell gold mine in Victoria, Australia, we were enjoying $20 a barrel oil for our underground diesel fleet, and were cosseted by grid power supplied by Victoria's bountiful brown coal or lignite deposits. By the early 2000s, Victoria had introduced a competitive electricity market, and as a wholesale customer, I was responsible for considering fixed or variable pricing. The question that we grappled with endlessly was whether to fix at around 3 cents per kilowatt hour or run variable and hope to realise a lower annual average cost, maybe in the order of 2.5 to 2.7 cents. We even had an elaborate protocol to shut down our ball mill if the spot price spiked against us. Talk about a high-class problem. Fast forward to 2013, and at Roxgold, we published a preliminary economic assessment for our Yaramoko gold project in Burkina Faso, West Africa. Yaramoko is a very high-grade underground gold project with an indicated resource grading over 0.5 ounce per tonne. This is a good thing because our assumed diesel price, our assumed diesel-generated electricity price was 34 cents per kilowatt hour. Several factors conspired to arrive at this price assumption, namely the high price of oil at the time, around $90 a barrel, a long logistics train as our project is approximately 1,000 kilometres from Abidjan, the principal port in Côte d'Ivoire across the border, and a non-refundable VAT of 17.5% of diesel. One of the very rare advantages also afforded to the Yaramoko project is its close proximity, within 4 kilometres, to the Burkina Faso electrical grid. Through the feasibility study, Roxgold's technical team and its advisors at BEC Cardno undertook considerable work to understand and gain comfort in the reliability of the grid in this part of the world. The offtake price is a relatively attractive, emphasis on relatively, of 17 cents per kilowatt hour. As I mentioned earlier, reliability is a critical consideration for a mining company. To this end, and while we are confident in the grid's availability and reliability, we are still putting backup plans in place. We will have full diesel backup capacity in place from startup and are considering a range of alternative renewable solutions which I will discuss shortly. The challenge of cost is exacerbated if you are operating lower grade high tonnage mines, as the power draw is invariably much larger. By and large, these are the predominant deposit types that we find in this part of the world. We faced similar challenges when we built the Sabodala gold project in Senegal, also in West Africa, a moderate-sized open pit that was initially a 2 million tonne per annum project. One of the challenges, apart from a frown-inducing work index in the high 20s, was the scale of the logistics exercise. To power the operation, we installed a 35 megawatt HFO heavy fuel oil power station, which required a fleet of more than a dozen tankers to be on the road every day of the week 24/7, ferrying fuel over the 700-kilometre journey to the capital, Dakar. As part of the fuel mix, several of my colleagues were keen on utilising Jatropha, as this had been demonstrated to be possible to run biodiesel in this type of unit we were installing. Unfortunately, industrial-scale Jatropha didn't really exist in Senegal at the time, and the plantation required would have covered most of the country and drawn an inordinate amount of water from the river, which was the border with Mali. So obviously would have run into some political considerations as well. While we were debating the merits of biodiesel, a practical answer was beating down upon our heads. When we discuss cost-effective remote alternatives in today's context, solar is never far from the discussion, especially as it might pertain in an African scenario. As we can see from the map of global irradiation, the greatest concentration of reliable solar energy is right where it is needed most, Saharan and Sub-Saharan Africa. The price per kilowatt of installed solar has decreased rapidly as efficiency has increased, which we believe is leading to an inevitability of on-site power generation through renewables. It was long said that no one was ever fired for buying IBM, and in a similar vein, no one in the mining industry was fired for buying Caterpillar diesel gensets. The continued employment prospects for someone who buys those same diesel gensets for a remote mining operation today, without due regard for how renewables could factor into the power equation, may not have so rosy employment prospects. Notwithstanding the planned grid connection and not counting my previous Jatropha adventures, the Yaramoko project is the first project that I have been involved in where renewable energy will make up a serious component of the energy equation. When considering our energy mix, reliability, availability and cost are the key considerations for us, and we believe that a blended solution of hydro-supplied grid power together with diesel backup and solar represents an advantageous combination of upfront capital, availability and life of mine operating cost. Our grid connection represents a relatively low upfront capital commitment and, when considering the alternatives, a relatively low operating cost. There is, however, precedent for grid power not being supplied evenly in some West African countries. This risk is somewhat magnified by the fact that Burkina Faso relies upon electricity imports from Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, two jurisdictions that have faced some challenges in the past. Electricity availability and politics are closely entwined in this part of the world, and when you are planning on a 10-year plus time horizon, it pays to have some redundancy. The diesel gensets are effectively an expensive insurance policy and provide life of mine protection for us for two key risks, namely the loss of mine services and the loss of revenue. We need reliable 24/7 backup power to operate our underground pumps and ventilation systems. From the perspectives of safety for our personnel and protection of our underground assets, this is essentially a non-negotiable. The loss of revenue is also an acute risk, as downtime in our mine or processing facility would be a significant issue for us. At this stage, we are looking to solar to bridge the gap between these two sources, essentially mitigating the availability risk of the grid and the cost of our diesel insurance policy. We have a number of stable demand installations for which solar is ideal, pumping and the accommodation village to name but two. Switching technology has come a long way in recent years, making the seamless transition between sources more manageable. Apart from the obvious economic benefits, renewables offer mining companies an opportunity to secure and strengthen social licence within the remote communities in which we operate. Access to reliable and affordable electricity is a fundamental building block of economic development and improvements in living standards. Electrification is a significant challenge, with per capita energy consumption extremely low in many parts of the African continent. Renewable and on-site generation has tremendous potential to turn this on its head.